Dark times indeed. Dark omens. The shattering of Galmaraz was clearly a sign from Sigma. A sign that things cannot continue as they are. I have always respected the Grand Theogenist, but at times I think he compromises too much. He tries to keep political waters calm. I do not seek war for war's sake, but there are times when it is necessary. The Ulricans have gone too far. They have allowed corruption and heresy to flourish under their lands. They must deal with their problems now. The Sigmarite heresy, as it is called, must be crushed, and all who support it crushed as well. It is our duty to Sigma. Only then can we focus on the possible corruption within. The young Inquisitor's words are brash and impudent. But is it possible that at our very heart the enemy have set their claws? Is everything else a distraction? It should be impossible. We would have seen it. But could I be wrong? No, I must focus. We must deal with the Ulricans once and for all. Nothing else matters, not yet. This is Red Moon role-playing. It is the middle of the night, as our three brave heroes quietly make their way through one of the many corridors of the great Imperial Palace. You've already gone past several guards at this point, but your guide, Elvira Kleinstein, does have a seal on a piece of paper that does seem to be letting you through, even though every time the guards are looking at you very suspiciously. It is, after all, the middle of the night, and you are slowly getting further and further into the chambers where the Emperor and his family literally live. This is not the sort of place people just come to in the middle of the night. All around you, you can see fine artwork on the walls, fine sculptures and relics from ages past, a lot of it quite dusty. Every now and again you see corridors that descend into darkness, not even any torchlight, because apparently several sections of this entire area are off-limits and unused. The living quarters of the Emperors have been around for some time, and several Emperors have had their own wings that then haven't been used by other Emperors. Some Emperors have blocked whole sections off. Some of them are just forgotten. It is a rather large place. Could easily house hundreds of people, never mind just a family of 10 or 15. But you're being led along. How are you feeling? Heinrich Schilf. The Imperial Palace. Not just the Imperial Palace, but soon the chambers of the Emperor himself. Look at all these fancy treasures.
I'm sure I will get used to this in the future, but for now it still has that slight giddiness to it. Although that's perhaps not the right word. That implies an excitement. In this case, it is more, I won't say fearful, but there's an anxiety, a skepticism. If we know, and I do know, that was not Galmaraz, what else around here is fake? You know what I'm saying?
Certainly something to think on. What about you, Kruger Hoffman? One thing's for sure, sneaking around here would be very challenging. Yes, you could sneak into all these unused areas, but everywhere there is torchlight, there are several guards. And these are Reichsguard. They are all fully armoured knights. Not just your normal soldiers.
I am certainly glad that we don't have to we don't have to sneak, that we have permission to be here. That is good. I wonder how I would do it, though. I find myself trying to figure out a way to do it, just to kind of pass the time as we're being led around there.
Indeed. Finally, Siegfrieda, on your way in the middle of the night to see a patient, who just so happens to be the Emperor of the Empire. How are you feeling?
I am feeling curious. There was a while where I was feeling stressed and rather vexed about this entire thing, but right now I'm very interested. He's been sick for some time. Maybe there's some way I can assist with that. And the very fact that there's this conspiracy that runs all the way to the heart of, power, it does make me wonder who exactly knew about it, or who knows about it now, and what the outcome of last night's, or this night's, recent fracas will be. I'm, very curious to see how this unfolds.
And so, finally, you are led down a dark corridor with some very nice wallpaper and plush red carpeting. You don't think this is anywhere close to the main chambers of the Emperor. It can't be, it seems too small. But maybe a side chamber or a side bedroom. You also several times have had to stop, and you think you heard movement from other corridors. You'd all be aware that it's very likely both the consort and her children are all somewhere around here. Maybe even the prince, the other Crown Prince Leopold, who, well, there are some rumours about him. Apparently he didn't do very well in some of his outings. He's a young man at this point, and a lot of people don't think he's very worthy of the title Grand Prince. It's one of the reasons the actual current heir is Crown Prince Wolfgang, who's actually technically just the nephew of the Emperor, as opposed to his actual descendant. Still, you move along. Just before you reach 2 more guards, Elvira pauses for a second. All right, well, about to go in. I've not actually come to see the Emperor himself at all, really. The doctor was quite clear on that. We've met outside, of course, but I've only been in once or twice, so I'm a little nervous, actually.
Well, how has anyone been treating him if his visitor list has been so strict?
Well, obviously I've given the prescriptions, and I do believe Dr. Kappermüller's been there the entire time.
Ah, Kappermüller.
Yes, Dr. Heinrich Kappermüller.
I've heard of him, Herr Dr. Heinrich Kappermüller.
Yes, a little bit of a strange fellow, but I think we've got on well. Again, obviously due to the situation, it's not like he's the main court physician, but due to the secrecy of everything, they needed someone who could be a court physician, but also, be secret about it. I do believe the head of the Physicians Guild obviously knows about this, but obviously a lot of the medical staff don't.
Well, hopefully it won't take anyone by a huge surprise that we are being introduced to this situation.
Well, he'll probably be a little surprised, but, well, you have permission to be here, and so you're going to be here, and I can't see any reason why he wouldn't take your counsel.
Well, let's put that to the test, shall we?
Yes. She goes up to the 2 guardsmen, who again look at you all very suspiciously, hands on their weapons, but then they see the seal and they kind of grunt and nod and allow you to pass, parting their halberds. And you are guided into a room, and the door's closed firmly behind you. The room itself isn't massive, but it does contain a large 4-poster bed draped in fine silks and surrounded by bedposts carved in the shape of griffins. There are no windows in here. There is a door to the left of you that does seem to lead somewhere else, and obviously there are some chamber pots nearby, and some chests of drawers. Currently, there is also a torch lit by a bedside table. As you enter, you see in the bed is a man. The man, perhaps at his prime, even considering he's at this point in his late 30s, would be quite intimidating. But right now he seems fast asleep, propped up by many pillows, wearing a fine griffin embossed robe. As soon as you enter, there is some movement in the room, and that door to another room swings open, and fully dressed comes another man. This man is rather thin, long-nosed, grey hair. He's wearing a green tunic with sort of red breeches. He has several pouches on his person. He does look very much like you'd expect someone in your profession to look, Siegfrieda. And he sort of looks about and says quietly, "What is the meaning of this? It's well, visiting hours are... What is going... Elvira, what are you doing here?" Dr. Kappamüller, forgive us for the late hour, but this is the entourage of Lady Wittgenstein, and she's here to see the Emperor." "Is she? I was not informed of this. Is this all legitimate? Have you spoken to Lady Zutermine?" Yes, we have, yes." I see. Well, I suppose then you are here. Greetings. This is the Emperor of the Empire. Currently sleeping, as you can see. I am Dr. Heinrich Kappelmüller.
Well, Dr. Heinrich Kappelmüller, it is my honor to be in your company. Such a renowned physician as yourself. Your methods are spoken of widely across the Empire.
He gives you a bit of a look, as if unsure whether you're joking or not. But he just then nods. "I haven't set out to make a reputation for myself."
We never do. These are my trusted companions and friends, Heinrich and Kruger. Both you will know, I am sure, by reputation, heroes of the Empire.
Pleasure to meet you.
I tip my hat.
He takes in a deep breath, which you all do. And you all smell something in the air. And you notice, Siegfrieda, that there are actually some little incense burners currently in the room. Could everyone make a -30 willpower test, please? That's a straight willpower test.
I roll 18 under willpower 31, so that's a failure.
My willpower is only 40 to begin with, so I have rolled an 81 over 10.
Oof.
I rolled an 80 over 16.
Would anyone like to re-roll that? You certainly can.
I don't think so, given that 16 is my current willpower rating. I'm not prepared to spend a point on that.
All failures. You all take a very deep breath in, and you smell this... There's something in the air, and it is very strong, like, my goodness, and as you take a big whiff of it, you all feel very dizzy. You've all just gained the fatigue condition. Whatever's in here is a little bit disorientating, especially as you just took in a deep breath. But you think, even if you hadn't taken a deep breath, it would have happened eventually. And you also notice Elvira is coughing a little, and as this happens, the doctor says, "Oh, apologies, my, part of the Emperor's treatment. Don't worry, you'll only be a little heady. If you need to have a seat, take a seat. What do you say, Heinrich Schilf? If you want, you can tough this out and remove this fatigue. As can everyone, actually."
Yes, whether or not this is the real Emperor or the real Emperor's physician, etc., I am not going to be the Inquisitor who walks into this room and then says, "Oh, dear me, I need the fainting couch." That is not a reputation I would like to have in front of the most powerful people in the Empire. So I will spend a point of resolve to remain on my feet and worthy of my duties.
Wonderful. Would anyone else like to spend a point of resolve to ignore this fatigue?
Yeah, why not?
I shall do the same.
Then all of you take a moment and tough it out. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. It took you a bit by surprise, but all of you realize it's just some sort of incense. What sort of incense, though? Interesting. Why doesn't everyone now roll a hard perception check? -20.
Well, that is dead on. I get 30 out of 30.
I'll use a point of fortune to try to re-roll. That's much better. 13 under 48. 3 degrees of success.
What was the negative modifier again?
-20.
Oh, okay. Then no, I'm 10 short.
Heinrich, you focus on steadying yourself, but you do notice this Siegfried, although it's Kruger who goes over to actually see it, and Yes, Kruger, there it is, right by the bedside. That's what's causing this scent. It's not even something that's lit very much. It just seems like a rather large bunch of herbs. As you look over at this, Kruger, the doctor says, Are you an apothecary?
Me? No. Oh, sorry.
No. Curious. This incense. What is it? It's very strong.
Indeed, it is part of my revolutionary treatment that so far has been helping. Although for how long, I can't say. A concoction of Schlafenkraut and moonflower with a little mixture of pine shavings. It's good for the nerves. Helps sleep.
I see. The name certainly indicates that it would have something to do with sleeping, so I guess you picked correctly.
Indeed. Again, my apologies. The Emperor requires this at all times.
I will stifle a snort of derision at this ridiculous chicanery disguised as medicine. What utter nonsense, filling the air with sweet-smelling vapours to make someone recover from an illness, or indeed to put them in a relaxed condition. Everyone worth their salt in the medical profession knows that if you are ill, you should be up and made to walk around, go outside, take in deep breaths, not sit in a stifling sauna like this.
What do you then do, Siegfrieda?
I wrinkle my nose and otherwise don't mention it. It's all internal monologue.
Then there's an awkward silence. Elvira simply says, I suppose that would certainly help with a relaxing temperament. Yes. Well, of course it would. Apothecary. That's why I'm doing it. But again, you have brought in second opinions. I see. Well, that's fine. If you are supposed to be here, please have a look at the patient. Let's see if I can rouse him. My Emperor! My Emperor! I'm so sorry. You have some unexpected guests. The Emperor, Karl Franz, starts to stir a little. Yes, don't worry, Your Grace. Feel free to just relax. They're just here to see you. The Emperor says, the eyes, not the eyes. No, not the eyes. No. There are no eyes, my Grace. Well then, he gestures towards you. Lady Wittgenstein, I have heard of you. Have a look. Pray tell, inform me of something I have missed. I would be most grateful.
Well, if I am given the authority to examine His Majesty.
Well, why else would you be here? He says, eyeing Elvira for a moment.
In that case, I will step forward. And what can I see with a cursory spot diagnosis, as it were? Looking over the Emperor, he seems to be wrapped up pretty tightly if he's wearing a cloak in bed. He is in a room without any windows or door to the outside, so there's no ventilation. So I'm imagining a room that's pretty thick with this damn incense. So wafting it out the way as much as I'm able, I want to get a good look at this poor man and see what, other than being bleached in perfume, is wrong with him.
What would you like to roll? Is this, do you think, law medicine or law anatomy, or is it a perception check? What do you think would suit if you are just doing a cursory examination?
Well, I'd go for law anatomy if there is something that's physically, if there's clearly something physically amiss, like there's a limb that's rotting or his eyes are sunken in his head or something like that. But if there's no obvious physical symptoms, I'd probably go for medicine instead.
I think you'll find there are some obvious symptoms. Let's roll law anatomy. Give yourself a +20 because it's quite obvious, and also you have had time, bit rushed, to, as you said, look into your notes about purple brain fever.
I rolled a 25 under 93.
That is a lot of success levels. You go over. You begin taking your time. There's no rush here after all. You begin making your initial tests and observations. The first thing that's obvious is, yes, he does seem to have the purple swelling that is what are the main symptoms of purple brain fever, mainly around the head and neck region. Although his limbs don't seem so bad. You look inside his mouth, his tongue does have that shade of purple. Although you've heard in your notes that this can get far, far worse than it looks, to the point where the subject is unable to speak at all and often chokes to death. In this case, the tongue is certainly a little purple, but the swelling is not that bad. Really isn't that bad. Not good, of course, but certainly not that bad. There's also no bulges around the actual brain. That's good. They're sweating, but of course they are in a hot room with all these fumes. As you're doing this, they are muttering a little incoherently, but they do still seem able to speak. And yes, that's the initial look. He certainly has signs of this purple brain fever, but initially it doesn't look nearly as serious as you'd think it would be, especially after 6 months. You've heard that in some cases this can kill in less than a month.
Maybe there is something to this incense after all if it's keeping him alive. There must be another reason. I'm sure you don't get to be emperor for quite as long as good old Carl here without a ruddy constitution. Now, if that is my diagnosis, purple brain fever indeed, I need to calculate the best form of treatment that isn't what he is currently receiving. I will look to Kappelmüller. Herr Doctor?
Yes, my lady.
Well, as we are both in professional situations, doctor is fine. Or Frau Doctor, if you prefer.
He squints a little and nods.
Do you know how the patient contracted his fever?
No. None do. I'm going to assume you've been informed of the situation. I was brought in, much like Elvira here, about a couple of weeks since the initial problem.
And you've been here ever since?
Yes, it has been vital for the care of the Emperor, and of course the situation, that I remain close at hand. I have chambers just over there, and he nods to the door.
Oh, I have no doubt that when it comes to lighting the joss sticks and candles... But yes, your presence here has, I have no doubt, been indispensable. So what do you know about the situation that led to the Emperor, His Imperial Majesty, I should say, coming down so unwell? You say you don't know how he contracted the fever, but do you, or has anyone else voiced a suspicion as to where it came from?
The Emperor needs to be in quite a few places at once. Many think it may have come apart 7, 8, 9 months ago during some of his tours of the various provinces of the Empire. Possibly. But again, who can tell? Purple brain fever sometimes can simply pop out of thin air, as I'm sure you know. It is a rather unusual disease. But we have been performing the standard treatments, the standard miracles, of course, although they do not seem to stick. Luckily, my concoction seems to have had great results in stabilizing him. However, looks to Elvira, how long I can keep him stable for, I admit I have been struggling with. In my professional opinion, I worry that it won't last forever, and that, well, let us just say the plans for the handing down of power were good. It is a great pity that they have been delayed. You, of course, realize he's talking about the wedding that was supposed to happen between Katerina Todbringer and Crown Prince Wolfgang, which, by the sounds of it, would then have given him legitimacy to be the next emperor. Although, of course, you do realize that no one was told about any of this.
Well, that is enlightening, Herr Doctor. Thank you so much. I assume the expense that goes into all of these treatments is probably quite vast.
Of course, but the Emperor can afford it. And yes, you are aware from having looked over at that list that the ingredients for this concoction are very, very expensive.
I hope that you are being kept financially comfortable, Herr Doctor.
He smiles. It's quite a crooked smile. His teeth are a little bit all over the place. "It is my pleasure to serve the Emperor. I am being compensated, but, well, again, I am happy to serve. I am hoping that this will prove my worth to the Physicians' Guild. I was not considered that worthy of them until this all occurred. But luckily my qualifications preceded me, as I'm sure they do for you."
Oh, well, yes, I mean, I'm sure both of us have got many coloured, interesting pasts. And believe me, I know what it is to not be taken seriously by the guild.
"Yes. No, I received my degree in Null at the university."
Ah, I see. Well, I happen to know that the Physicians Guild is opening a sub-school of dentistry, should you wish to pay them a visit. I need to speak with my companions briefly, but thank you for all you do, especially if, being from Nuln, as you are, this is quite some way to travel and ply your expertise.
"Yes, well, this is Altdorf. Nuln is a fine city. This is the capital."
Oh, I do not... I would never say Altdorf is anything but the finest of cities.
He nods, and as this happens, again the Emperor says something. The southern province, the hammer. Yes, do not worry, my Emperor. You can rest. And so you return to your companions, and Elvira, who's just patiently waiting, sort of worrying a little with something in her hands.
What are you holding there, Elvira?
Oh, it's just my little bracelet charm she wears. I'm rather nervous. It's the Emperor. I haven't really been here. It's the longest I've actually been in this room.
I know, it's always tragic, isn't it, when someone so high falls so low. They lose some of their immortality when in such a visibly weakened state, but I am sure that between all of us we can put him back up on his horse.
She nods eagerly.
Kruger, Heinrich, shall we have a word?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Please,
Unless the two of you wish to make devotions to the Emperor in some way. I don't know that he would acknowledge them, but, you know, some old superstitions say that the right tribute laid at the feet of a dying man is enough to give him a second lifetime.
Now, probably does not seem like the appropriate time.
No, it doesn't. It is certainly a special feeling to be in the same room as him, though, having heard about him all my life. But, yes, what have you found? What is ailing him?
I will make sure that we're out of earshot of both Elvira, who I like, but I can't say I trust all that much, and especially out of the earshot of Crooked Teeth Kappelmüller.
Yes, you're able to do this. No roll needed to see that while Elvira is quite happy just to step aside, you can all notice that Dr. Kappelmüller is politely standing away, but looking a little irritated, probably because, well, 3 people in here talking privately during this hour probably is irritating him.
Oh, Herr Dr. Kappelmüller, I realise this is a great imposition to talk outside of your earshot, and this is, after all, your patient, in a way, your hospice. Would you mind if we used your chambers?
He wrinkles his nose before nodding. Of course, certainly.
Thank you. We won't be long, and we of course won't interfere with anything of yours.
He opens the door and shows you the way to essentially a copy of this room. The bed is far less made up. There's a couple of chests in here of belongings, and there seems to be a side room, which of course is a privy. Very nice. Freshly made chamber pots, and even, Siegfrieda, a sink. My goodness, plumbing.
Indoor plumbing, yes.
Of course, the Emperor has it.
Well, right now so does Herr Dr. Kappelmüller. Okay, ensuring that the door is closed, and that we step as far away from it as possible, but not too close to the privy. Well, you heard everything he said. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm no medical expert, but all this incense... Does it truly work? Is it truly helping the Emperor?
feels like more of a sedative than anything else, but if he is as far gone as the purple brain fever I can see behind his eyes is taking him, maybe keeping him in a comatose fashion is truly the best thing. I'm not an apothecary, so I do not know for certain, but this Kappelmüller does make me feel suspicious. We've encountered many a rogue from Nuln.
I smile at that. Yes, we are known for our roguish behavior, that is true.
I look at you. But were I a less scrupulous doctor, keeping an incredibly powerful, wealthy patient like this alive for as long as possible so that I could stay in chambers as opulent as these with indoor plumbing? It would hold some appeal, wouldn't it?
It certainly would. And caring for the Emperor, I mean, that must be one of the most important roles anyone has in the Empire, right? So it's not a role one would want to give up anytime soon.
And the entire situation of his being the apothecary that they have utilised, I have no doubt that his skills are profound and he is acclaimed, but it feels strange to me that they would summon an apothecary all the way from Nuln for the Emperor. It just seems an odd choice, almost like there's well, I know we've encountered a few of them, but a conspiracy at work.
Indeed.
Due respect to both of you for your concerns, but I believe one apothecary's career advancement is perhaps not the most important angle that could be achieved with the Emperor in such a position. Is it not suspicious that the Emperor lay bedridden while the North crumbles, while religious wars split Middenheim, while the provinces of the South begin to grumble and snipe and snip at one another?
Oh, I'm not suggesting that these elements are disparate at all. I think that the person or people behind this, all they would need to do is hire an unscrupulous apothecary to ensure that the Emperor remains in this position while they destabilize the pillars of, society. But I don't know. There's obviously someone behind this, and what troubles me most is that if we were to be hasty, which of course we won't be, not every situation requires setting fire to a place, but let's say we were to clap this apothecary in irons. The Emperor's condition is grave, and I am no expert, not enough to say that I would be able to save the Emperor were this sedation to suddenly end. So we're stuck between the proverbial rock and a hard place.
Indeed.
I don't think rash action, for once, would be to our benefit, but this apothecary can't have come from nowhere. Either he was known in the court or he was known in Nuln. Perhaps this is something we can figure out by finding the power behind the throne. Who chose this man?
Just what I was about to ask, yes. Who recommended him? On whose recommendation was he the one chosen? Curious.
I give my chin a rub. I miss Erica, who I left back in the city. Maybe if this Herr Doctor has something to hide, I'm thinking to myself, he would be brazen enough to have it here with his belongings. We currently have the run of his chambers, so maybe my two roguish companions wouldn't mind opening a few chests. I will look to Heinrich and Kruger. I don't think he's going to interrupt us. Maybe we should have a look around, see if there's anything incriminating here.
Yes, good idea. Good idea. Someone might need to occupy him while we're doing this, though. He might otherwise pop in to ask questions. Maybe.
I can go back out and say that you are taking it in turns to use the privy.
Well, that might work.
It's going to take a while because it's indoor plumbing. I mean, I have never seen this before. I don't know how it works.
Well, I am pleased that you think that this is such a good idea, then. Wonderful. I will leave you two to rummage, and I will occupy the doctor. I will stifle my laughter.
Very well, then. Siegfrieda, you depart the room. You, as you do, see Elvira looking on with concern, and the doctor does come forward. Everything all good? What are your two friends doing in there, my lady?
Well, I'm sure I wouldn't like to say. They are occupied in private business right now.
They really are doing that now, in there. This is the Emperor's chambers, his sick bay. I hope they don't have anything.
The thought going through my head is, well, how often do you get a chance to really use the Emperor's privy? Who would miss out on such an opportunity? But I don't say that out loud. Instead, I just try to stay fixed on his eyes. If I look anywhere else, I may just laugh. No, we have, of course, various avenues that we need to investigate, and Heinrich and Kruger, there really are no better investigators in this entire land, as far as I'm concerned. When they put their heads together, they can crack anything, and right now, between them, they're formulating a plan that I'm sure will be without measure. So let's give them the time they need, and but maybe between the two of us we can make the Emperor, His Majesty, slightly more comfortable.
He frowns, quite obviously not happy with this scenario, but you are very distracting, and your distraction for now is working.
I'll take him to His Imperial Majesty and say, so has anyone ever showed you the art of bloodletting?
He scoffs, saying quietly, I am at the level of a court physician, my lady. Of course I am aware of bloodletting.
Ah, but I am sure no one has shown you bloodletting quite like this. Now, the whole point of this, of course, is to keep him occupied talking about medical minutiae while the other two remain busy in his chamber.
Indeed. Heinrich, Schilf, and Kruger Hoffman, you have a chamber. You have some chests, you have a privy, you have a bed, a wardrobe. What do the two of you do?
I've stolen quite a few things and burgled quite a few different locations in my days. I'll go for the place where people tend to hide stuff that's important and valuable and contains incriminating evidence.
Certainly. And what of you, Herr Schilf?
Well, lacking Kruger's nose for things, I'm happy to take a more holistic look, specifically correspondence, any texts, seeing if it has the stink of chaos on it.
Well, in that case, why don't you both make perception checks, and you can make them at a +10, as you are effectively helping each other out.
That is 45 under 78, so that's 3 degrees of success.
My first success of the game, 37 under 64, so 2 degrees of success.
Kruger first. Kruger, you try to focus on those chests and letters, and with a little bit of lock-picking, which we won't make you roll, it's easy to jimmy the locks on these chests. There's lots of travel clothes, lots of paperwork. Before, there was a time you couldn't read at all. Now you can a little, but it's still difficult. There's a lot of medical stuff here, formulas, notations. Again, it does seem as if he's been here for quite some time. You do notice, it does seem there's a few pieces of paper, and there are some names on those pieces of paper, signing them off, and they are signed off by both Elvira Kleinstein and Dr. Heinrich Kappelmuller. Look at the dates, and there's quite a lot of them. This is interesting to you, because you seem to remember Elvira outside just saying she'd only been here once or twice to actually see the Emperor. But quite a few of these talk of joint treatments. That's odd. There's more than one or two here, and there's quite a lot.
That is curious indeed. I'll keep one of those papers, because I'm going to want to show them, well, first to Siegfrieda, of course, but then we could perhaps even see if Elvira recognizes this, or if there's perhaps some forgery going on.
Indeed. Heinrich Schilf, you are looking over notes and papers as well, but you're not really seeing anything that interests you. You begin just walking around the room, poking your head here and there, tapping on walls. You go to the privy. What a marvellous invention. You have heard of this. This is apparently where rich people's sewage goes, into the sewer. That, of course, is the reason most sewers exist. Of course, the average peasant just throws it all in a bucket. But, wow, this actually apparently takes it all the way from the palace down into those sewers. Fascinating. And that's why you notice there's an odd smell in here. It's not what you'd expect. It's not something unpleasant. It actually doesn't smell too bad. Cinnamon. You think, or something sweet like that. There's something sweet smelling around the sink area. Interesting. Not what you were expecting to smell.
Does that have any connotation to something else? Would I recognize that smell as being attached to a particular liturgy or cult of some particular kind?
No, not any sort of cult. But you're not a doctor. Maybe Siegfried would know. It occurs to you. It's odd that it would be here. It does occur to you that the only two people who should be using this privy are the Emperor and Dr. Kappermuller. So, yes, that's odd. But no, cinnamon itself is just a standard herb. It's quite an expensive one, used for sweetening things.
Or covering up something worse. Well, I will, as always, defer to Siegfried's expertise in matters apothecarial. Even if she is not an expert, she has far more knowledge on the subject than I do.
Meanwhile, outside, you've had your conversation for about 5 or 10 minutes, and at this point, Kappermuller does again look to the door and just start walking towards it, going, everything all right in there, you two? I must apologize. This is... The Emperor needs his rest, if there's nothing else to be said.
Herr Dr. Kappermuller, you need to understand that we do have friends in the Black Chamber.
As do I, my lady.
Therefore, you should understand very easily that any conversations that we need to keep private ought to be kept private, even if it does inconvenience you and your access to your privy.
He frowns a little, and then says, yes, but I also only have reputation and Elvira's word here that you are who you actually say you are. What is the meaning of this? Why do you need to be in my chambers? And then at that he just opens the door.
How rude, Herr Doctor! I stomp over to him. Get in his face. Just in case they're busy doing something illicit in there, I need to basically be, albeit much smaller than him, I'm sure, jumping up and down pretty much in his way and ranting at him so that they can compose themselves and emerge in a normal fashion.
Why don't you roll an intimidate check? An opposed roll, this will be.
Not with that, I won't. Remind me, what do I need to spend to just choose a result?
That would be one of your points of resilience, yes.
Well, consider my resilience lowered by 1. I want to scare the living shit out of this man. I don't like him. I don't like his name. I don't like his teeth. And I'm certainly not allowing him to interfere with our investigation.
And so you spend a point of resilience to give yourself, well, as you said, the best roll possible. You look him dead in the eyes, and you assert your authority. But he does not quiver and quail away from you. He does not whimper. For a moment in his eyes you see utter rage. But he stifles it down. He crunches his fist and very quietly says, my lady, tell them to hurry up. I am going to report this. This is outrageous.
Oh, well, I am sure that is your right. But, gentlemen, Kruger, Heinrich, it seems that Herr Dr. Kappermuller has dire need of the privy and would not be restrained from it any longer.
Oh, coming.
And so, Heinrich and Kruger, you did hear a little disturbance at the door, but it does seem as if no one actually came in. Still, it might be time to finish up.
Yes, well, I've secured some form of evidence, so I feel quite satisfied. I'll look to Heinrich.
Oh, quite. And even if I wasn't, it's obvious the time for investigation here has passed, so we wouldn't want to arouse additional suspicion.
And so the two of you depart, and again, Siegfried, you see the doctor very clearly holding back quite clear rage, but again, you feel that he is cowed by you.
With this doctor exhibiting rage to what is an astronomical intimidation, yes, he is cowed by me. Do I suspect, or do I get any kind of feeling that there is something magical reinforcing his will here, or basically turning his fear into anger? Because this isn't the first time we've seen cultists, typically, who they don't break and flee. Their fear tends to manifest as hysterical laughter in one case when we were torturing someone, or just absolute frenzied anger.
I shall say this due to the spending of the resilience. You do not sense anything magical or unusual about this in that regard. But it is a very odd reaction. Yes, going around someone's chambers makes sense, but what you just saw in his eyes, that is very unusual. Very unusual. And he's clearly trying to hide it quite well, except for the fact that, yes, you saw it in his eyes. By asserting that dominance over him, he should have quailed far more. There's more to this doctor than meets the eye. Definitely.
And His Royal Majesty, the Imperial Emperor, was indeed muttering to himself about the eyes. I'm sure he was. Anyway, we should leave this place. I don't think we're going to have the opportunity to spend some alone time with His Imperial Majesty.
At this, Elvira says, Are you sure? There's nothing else that can be done?
It is quite possible that I could assist the Emperor surgically, as that is my specialty, but I would need immediate access to my books to do so. So I need to arrange for their transport here, unless Herr Dr. Kappelmüller objects, at which point I can study them at least close to the Emperor's side, and maybe not just alleviate, but remove some of the infection that is currently raging inside him.
Elvira simply nods, and Dr. Kappelmüller says, Good, I look forward to hearing your thoughts, Lady Wittgenstein.
You are doing splendid work here, Herr Doctor.
And with that, you depart the room, you go past the two guards, and you walk along just a little. It's at this point that Elvira just leans in. So what did you think? Did any deductions? Should the formula be working? She says to all three of you.
Yeah, I'm chewing my lip, thinking. Again, I still have in my mind that he is being sedated, possibly unnecessarily, but still it is a terminal condition, and if he isn't being sedated, he could die. So it's almost like giving someone half an antidote. I'm not expressing this to Elvira. She seems to be perfectly nice and worried, like anyone in her position would be, but I've learned to my cost, and I think all of us have at this point, that we can't just trust the nice ones.
The last time I got attached to a nice woman, she tried to murder us in our sleep.
Yes, exactly.
Then you say nothing, and Elvira just walks along a little. Is there anything all three of you would like to quickly whisper to each other?
I'll produce this paper that I secured, showing it to Siegfrieda as well. I thought that this was kind of interesting. Elvira signed off on this.
I'll have a quick read of it. What does it say?
It's a visitation, saying the apothecary and the doctor administered the treatment. And yes, that makes sense to you. It makes sense that she'd be here to see the treatment. It also makes sense to you that they make sure just one person wasn't doing all this. Of course, there should be someone else checking in. Although, then Siegfrieda, didn't she just say she's not actually been here in person very often at all? That's odd.
Elvira.
Yes?
When did you... you mentioned you haven't been here before.
Oh, hardly at all, no. Again, part of the doctor's instructions.
I look to my companions. Are they okay with me showing her this paperwork?
I nod. She seems nice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how difficult can she be to murder if things go wrong? I walk up to her with the scroll in hand. Is this your mark at the bottom of this?
Oh? And she scoops the paper and looks at it and frowns heavily. Well, that is my mark, but I didn't sign this piece of paper.
So you did not sign into approval the treatment that the Emperor is currently receiving?
Oh, no, I've obviously been sending the approval for treatments, but this is a direct consultation. I haven't done that.
Well, yes. Are you sure?
Yeah.
And I know that may sound utterly ridiculous. You would remember if you had been in the presence of His Imperial Majesty, especially in such a situation. But I am asking you right now, my dear, my friend, I need you to think. Is there any possible way that you were here and may have forgotten or been forced to forget?
Well, I've been here once or twice, but not on this... Not... How... Well, not this time. And at this point, Kruger, you'd be aware that this is just one paper. There were dozens of papers signed off.
There were many papers just like this one. It seems like, well, either you have been here to sign things, or someone is forging your signature.
Well, that's terrible. Who would do such a thing? What? This is... Oh, no, I have not.
Perhaps the Herr Doctor is doing that? I mean, he seems to be the one in control of the entire treatment, is he not?
Oh, goodness me. I guess so, yes. She clearly is looking quite panicked and upset by all this.
Now, Elvira, dear, I strongly suggest you keep this quiet for the time being. We're going to need to plan. As tempted as I am for us to rush in, and I clench my fist. You know, if he is suspicious of us, he may escalate matters now that our backs are turned. Perhaps our hand is forced. Maybe we need to enter there and extract him from the situation. Put Elvira in his place and have him to interrogate. And if this affects our reputation, so be it. But the longer we leave him in there, the more damage he could potentially do to the Emperor.
And it's as you're saying this, quietly among yourselves, that you will notice coming down the corridor, Heinrich, people. Quite a few people. Slowly. Various individuals cloaked in, well, some dark clothing, although underneath it does seem as if they have uniforms of soldiers. And leading them with a click-clack, Lady Jana Zutermine. She's coming towards you very slowly, and as you notice her, she smiles and gives you a wave. What do you do?
Immediately, I will not whisper, but very quietly grumble to my companions. Things are about to get significantly more interesting. Then I will stiffen myself, take a step out towards the hallway, and whatever time I can buy with an introduction and speaking loudly enough such that Siegfrieda and Kruger can hear, and then I will give a customary greeting. Ah, my lady. A pleasure to see you, although also a surprise.
Oh, dearie, I'm sure it is, but don't worry. No one's in any trouble. Elvira, do you mind just stepping aside a little? I urgently need to speak to these three. Elvira just nods, clearly not quite recovered from the revelation she's just received, but she nods, and you notice, Kruger, as she steps away, that some of these soldiers or guards with Lady Jana just sort of step to the side and seem to be keeping an eye on her. As she comes in and says, "Well, I think we have an awful lot to talk about."
You have listened to an episode of Red Moon Roleplaying, where we played the legendary campaign, The Enemy Within, for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th Edition, published by Cubicle 7. In this final part of the series, we are tackling Empire in Ruins. Joining us as players in this series are none other than Aaron Hammonds from Queen's Court Games and our dear friend Matthew Dawkins. The music was made by Flowers for Body Snatchers, Wordclock, Metatron Omega, Ager Sonus, Apocryphus, Halgrath, and Northumbria, featuring a number of collaborations with other artists, and was used with permission from their label, Cryochamber. Check out their website at cryochamber.bandcamp.com or their YouTube channel for some moody dark ambient for your gaming table. We would like to give massive thanks to our champions of the Red Moon: Martin Heuschober, Simon Cooper, David, Julia, Camilla, Bob Lange, Cameron, Graham Barey, Doug Thomson, Lily, Mike Parker, and Maciej for their generous support. And would of course also like to thank all of our other patrons. Without your support, the show would not be possible. If you want to support our work, please check us out on Patreon. You can get access to our Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay bonus campaign, Rough Nights and Hard Days, as well as bonus campaigns for Cultivated Lost and Call of Cthulhu there. On top of that, we also offer early and raw access to all of our recordings. You can also hear your name read on the show as a champion of the Red Moon, as well as play some Cult with us. Most importantly, that support is what keeps the show going, so do check us out there. Thank you again for listening. And remember that Skaven are definitely not real, and not even a little.